I'd like to bring to order the regular council meeting of Monday, July 23rd, 2018. Roll call, please. Mr. Lauer.
I have not heard from Mrs. Merrill. Mr. Steigel? Here. Mr. Curry? Here. Mr. Bergquist?
Here.
Mr. Lewis? Mr. Lewis? Mr. Ball?
Present.
Mr. Kozer? Here.
All right, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting held on July 9th, 2018.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Any further discussion, changes, alterations, deletions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 6-0.
Mr. Bergquist,
Please
just
let the record state that Mrs. Merrill is now in council chambers.
Please excuse my tardiness.
Very unusual, I might add. All right. Okay, next we have special reports, and we do have one this meeting from our illustrious chairman of our Park and Recreation.
Thank you for that. Good evening, all. I'm reporting on the second quarter of Parks and Rec Board, April, May, June. There are three items that transcend all three, so I'll start with those basically because you'd hear how things transpired. First is the DCNR grant. We had two of them. One is for the replacement of the shelter, two in the adjacent playground. The second was for the installation of a new playground in the park and ADA improvements in Peters Woods Park. The bids, specs for shelter 2 and playground are back from the DNCR for review, back at the DCNR for review, and are close to going out for bid. The second DCNR bid was, we're going to wait till we move along on the first project before we start the second. Rolling Hills Park we talked about. We talk about that a lot, but it moved into fruition with council's approval. We talked a lot about the road design going into the park, and we spent some time discussing the plan, feeling that the interior roads, utilities, the lawns and great lawns and picnic areas, as well as the dog park, should be included in the first planning or phases. And then we talked about the aquatic center and had a long discussion on it. We realized the costs and things that go into it, but we felt that it should be included in the first 5-year plan, since it seems that most of the residents, from what we've seen, want an aquatic park. So that was our Rolling Hills so far. Third was the Field 5 restroom and concession stand. The ribbon cutting was 4/11. It's a beautiful place. It only adds to the already fine facility we have up there, but I was there on 4/11 for the ribbon cutting, and it really looked wonderful. It's complete. We had some vandalism, and the contractor was able to correct the little bit of vandalism that happened up there. So now I'm going to backtrack to just April. April, we had Mark Ingram come in from the Montour Trail, gave us their plan for this year and what happened last year. We did have a discussion with him on our philosophies on motorized vehicles on our trail, basically the wheelchairs. And he understood why we do what we do and not having cars and things up there. We had to have the president of the Wrestling Association come in because we weren't happy with the information we were getting, or the lack of information we were getting from the Wrestling Association. We had a lengthy discussion. He had some output that he thought he was sending that really he didn't send to us, either via email or just regular dropping it off. So at the end of the discussion, he now understands why we need the information and why we need it in a timely manner. We also then discussed at that same meeting the thinking about fingerprinting in the background check requirement that is in our state and also in our township. We had our first discussion in April on drones and drones use in the park. We continue to talk about drones. In May, we discussed the baseball project, the scope and the time frame. We understand, and it kind of transcends a little bit, that the baseball project came in a little more than expected cost-wise from Gateway Engineering, and baseball seemed not to bat an eye at it. They said they kind of already planned on that being the cost and to move forward with what they wanted to do with their project. Gateway's working right now, I guess, on the bid specs. We had 2 Eagle Scouts come in May and propose 2 projects. One is down at Peters Lake Park at the entrance and doing some work on the entrance and making it a little easier to get in. There is some discussion that has to happen with the township on what and how he can do it, and that's basically in the way of where he's going now, and he will propose back to us, mainly Michelle, and what's going on. The second project also had the same kind of an issue. He wanted to clean up around the haunted trail up here in the park, but there's a gas line easement that we have to worry about. So again, there has to coordinate with the township and our department and making sure what's going on and what he wants to do. We asked both of them, once there's an approval, to come back and show us when it's finished, because so often they come in, propose it, do it, and then we never hear about it again, other than we get to see it. So we asked them, and they said they are. In May, we decided as a board to put into writing our April comments with the Wrestling Association, so we had a paper trail for some reason if we needed it, and that they would have it in their file as they turn over. One of the excuses used was, we have people that turn over every year and they don't know the regulations and the rules. So although Michelle has a alliance meeting every year, they hear what we want and how we want it, we decided we should write them a letter and have it in their file and our file. So we did that. In June, we reviewed a list of events asking for alcohol, and we discussed it and approved all of them. And that was new to this year anyway for us. We had a student stop into the rec center and wanted to put a lemonade stand on the trail. And she was told that we don't normally do that, but she certainly could come to the rec meeting and talk to us, and she didn't come. So we did have a conversation on it, though, and thought that we need to be careful with the precedent any of those things set. So we haven't heard from her, but we did discuss it. It was a quiet quarter. That's about what we did. Any questions?
No, I'd say that was a very thorough report.
What?
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
Thank you.
All right, Matt, thanks a lot.
We do thank council for backing too, that you do.
All right. Next item on the agenda is audience comments. This is an opportunity for anyone in the audience who would like to talk about an item that is not on this evening's agenda, and we limit those conversations to 5 minutes-ish. So is there anyone in the audience that would like to come forward and talk about a non-agenda item? Seeing no one rushing up to the mic, we will continue to move on to the agenda. Next item is unfinished business, which there is none. And that moves us to new business. And the first item on the agenda is accept the resignation of Ms. Ava Corey Roberts as a member of the Environmental Quality Board.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion that we accept Ms. Corey Roberts' resignation with regrets and wish her well at Baylor University.
Second.
Any further discussion? I will note she did an excellent job for a high school student to be involved in one of our boards, and she should be commended for her efforts. Seeing no additional discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
We have been in contact with Ms. Corey Roberts. She has offered us some names of additional students who would be interested. In addition to that, we've been in contact with the high school. The high school principal is going to help us with that through the same program. So
Great.
Hopefully we can find someone.
Perfect. All right, thanks, Paul. Next item is resolution authorizing the appropriate officials to submit an application for a multimodal transportation fund grant of $3 million from the Commonwealth Financing Authority for the purpose of financing construction of Rolling Hills Drive.
So the state of Pennsylvania has a program to assist municipalities with constructions of roads. There are other projects throughout the state that exactly match what we're trying to do here, where you're creating a new municipal road to either service a school or a park. We have been in contact with the school district, and although the township will be the named applicant, we are going to market this as a joint application, and they have committed to provide 50% of the match. So it's my recommendation that council adopt Resolution 702 authorizing the appropriate officials to apply for the grant.
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion on this? We should note that the school district is also joining us in this effort to attain this grant. Hopefully, being that we're both coming in, it'll give us a better opportunity for success. Next item on the agenda is to award a contract.
We have to vote.
Didn't vote.
We didn't vote.
Skipped right by it with my little accolade. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 720. Next item is award a contract for the 2018 storm sewer project.
The 2018 budget includes an appropriation of $300,000 for stormwater work. Already, we have committed $10,000 of that to a project that's underway on Gateway Drive. The bids that we received for the projects, including the alternate, was $130,110. So we're substantially below the amount that was budgeted. The one thing that I want to point out, that this add alternate that's included here was the work that was associated with the extension of the storm sewer on Scarborough Lane to help Miss Nancy Peyton Levy and her neighbor deal with the stormwater problem she has. Mark's estimate for the cost of that project prior to bidding was $15,000. It has come in at $23,375. Mark and I both are convinced that this is something that needs to be done. She has a problem that can't be solved without the township's extension of that sewer line. And given that these prices, the total bid is actually fairly aggressive, it's our recommendation that a contract be awarded for $130,110.
I'll make a motion that we approve the base bid and the alternate to Stranisha Excavating for the total of $130,110.
Second. Any further discussion?
We had experience with them? I'm not recognizing the name.
Yes. Yes.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. 720. Next item on the agenda is the final plan approval for the proposed Juniper Woods single-family residential plan of lots on plans prepared by Civil and Environmental Consultants, Inc. for Ryewood LLC, dated July 2nd, 2018. I would like to note that the conversation this evening is in regard to the approval of the final plan and not regarding Manor Way extension. Council has directed the township manager to continue negotiations in accordance with the opinion of the solicitor regarding Manor Way. So that item is really not an agenda item this evening, but the approval of the final plan is. All right, so go ahead, Mr. Lauer.
I'm going to turn this over to Ed for a brief introduction, and then the developer's prepared to make a presentation. Yes, I do.
This is council's final approval of the Juniper Woods plan. It's a proposed 60-lot subdivision, property zone, low-density residential. It's included in the Conservation Residential Overlay District. They are proposing in this plan to use the CR Overlay District requirements. It's 30.4 acres. They're proposing 60 lots. 61 is permitted under the ordinance. They're at 1.9 density, 2.2 lots per acre is the allowable density. They are required to set aside 25% of the gross site as open space. They're setting aside close to 30% as open space. It has been through the preliminary plan approval process. The Planning Commission approved the preliminary plan August 10, 2017. And Council approved the preliminary plan on August 9, 2017. Final plan mirrors and conforms to the approved preliminary plan both at Planning Commission and Council levels. And I know there is representation here tonight from the applicant to run Council through the plan in a little bit more detail. Planning Commission did at their May 10, 2018 meeting recommend Council approve the Juniper Woods final plan subject to those 10 conditions listed in my report. Some of those conditions are addressed and some remain still as conditions.
Thank you very much. I'm Adele Beeves with Civil and Environmental Consultants here on behalf of Briarwood LLC. And I'll just go through the PowerPoint. A lot of the information is in this PowerPoint, but a brief overview. And just to give you some context for where the site is, that is the approximate location in relationship to the county line. A closer view here of your zoning map shows that it is in the low-density residential with the CR overlay. You can see the site in the top corner there. This is an aerial view of the property, approximately 30.4 acres, located off of Thompsonville Road. The area is in red of the site. And here's a topography map, a larger scale view showing the areas of the wetland resources that are on the property currently. As Mr. Zook mentioned, it's low density residential in the CR overlay, 60 units, and we are proposing option A of the CR overlay, 2 lots per acre with 25% set aside. We have more than that at 30% set aside for open space. The net area is just the area that was mentioned, not encumbered by easements. And some of the site design requirements, we had used a narrow right-of-way, and the sidewalks are 5 feet on both sides of the road, except where we have stream crossings. Setbacks for the front yard are 20 feet. Side yards are 7.5 feet, but at corners they are 15. The rear yard is 20 feet. Maximum lot coverage is 30%, and then the minimum lot width is 50, but we have designed it to be 58 at the minimum. This is just a layout of the lots where you can see the location of the connection off of Thompsonville Road, the 2 stream crossings that we have. Manor Way is to the left, and we also have 2 stormwater detention facilities, one in the southwest corner and one in the northwest corner of the site. 3,400 linear feet of roads in the project. And there's just a view of where the open space is actually being provided throughout the development. In the lighter green on the lower half of the image, you can see the 2 surface ponds for stormwater. And then the site comes with numerous easements for gas, sewers, and stormwater. We've imposed some traffic calming measures such as raised crosswalks and low-speed curves at the intersections, and then stop conditions at the intersections to calm traffic. This is some of the renderings of the potential homes that would be constructed there, which are in the 3,200 to 4,200 square foot range. They're the Heartland Homes models. There's a few more there that you can see. So that's the style of houses that's proposed. And that is all. I understand we've satisfied the conditions that are still out there are permit type third-party reviews, and the engineering comments have been substantially addressed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any comments from members of council?
I had a few questions related to the plan. The open space that's dedicated exceeds the minimum. How much of that is actually available for recreational use as opposed to just unusable open land?
There, all of it would be available. Obviously, the stormwater ponds. Realistically, I don't have that number off the top of my head. What would be, active, cleared of trees and whatnot, but.
Mr. Zook, was there a discussion with Park and Rec about that? Normally, the Park and Rec board weighs in on plans.
It did, and all the open space in the Juniper Woods plan is to be set aside as part of the HOA. It'll be private. And there is some opportunity in some of those open space areas for the HOA to go in and do some sort of recreation if they desire.
We would have, some peripheral areas that are, the darkly green spaces are wooded, but the topography may be such that there are some flatter wooded spaces that could be utilized as well.
I was trying to look at the plans and see some of the signage And I wondered, is there a monument sign at the beginning on Thompson Mill?
There is one to be planned? Okay, so there will be a monument sign.
And then if in fact the extension goes through the manor, would there be a second one over there?
I'm not sure at this time.
And then as
No.
far as stop signs, it's probably not necessary now, depending on what happens with the cut through, but as you loop around at the back, at lot 51, if that in fact becomes a cut through, there should probably be a stop sign there, so that people, at least something, so that people don't just barrel through there.
Okay, I can note that, and if it does come
One
to
other
that.
thing, most of the frontages look to be 20-foot setback, is that true?
Correct, it's a 20-foot minimum setback. They're set
And
in
you're
general.
meeting minimum, I suppose?
Correct, it's all meeting the minimum for
That's
the.
good to know.
Mhm.
And then all the garages seem to be front entrance, is that the general plan? So they'll be pretty much the same other than
Mhm.
what
They'll all be.
Thank you.
So, okay, thank you. I was just trying to note.
Any other members of council? Any members of the audience would like to come up for some comments? Please state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Joe Delisio. It's Delisio. I live at 3110 Manor Way with my wife Deborah. We've lived there for 35 years. If I understand the council right, you're going to vote on this plan without the Manor Way connection, but that's still part of the Rywood LLC plan, the connection? You're
Yes.
voting on part of the plan, but not the whole plan.
Pardon me?
You're voting on part of the plan, but not the
No,
whole
we're
plan.
voting on the whole plan.
What it would require is, as we spoke, it requires that that road be extended so that, in fact, it can be connected to the existing Manor Way.
Okay, so then I have a prepared statement then tonight. I'd like to thank the council for the opportunity to speak tonight. I have much to talk about and many questions, but first I must ask, at the last Planning Committee meeting, May 10th, 2018, the Juniper Woods Plan was approved with several stipulations required to be met before moving on to this council for final approval. I'm talking about stipulation number 10, page 3 of the Planning Commission minutes. It states that the Manor Way construction details be worked out prior to council considering the plan for final approval. At this time, the details are not worked out. Rather, they are in complete disarray for several reasons. Juniper Woods' final plan references a township 40-foot right-of-way accepted by the township in 1972. That would be page 2 of the May 10th Planning Committee meeting. So at this time, I'd ask the council to consider and vote that the Juniper Woods final plan be tabled and the matter referred back to the Planning Committee until all stipulations are complied with. Is that possible? That it be tabled and referred back?
Why does it say in the report complete?
Well, because as I read that requirement, the Manor Way construction detail to be worked out prior to council considering the Juniper Woods final plan, it in fact has been worked out. The question was, where would this road terminate out of this plan? And we now know that. We know that that location will be where it is shown on that plan. It will be here.
You mean where the red arrow is?
It will be here. Now, what we are in the process of doing is attempting to negotiate an agreement, and there is a difference of opinion amongst attorneys as to what it is we are required to acquire. It is the township's position, based upon the opinion of the solicitor, that the recorded right-of-way, the township no longer has ownership rights to it. But what it does have ownership rights to, according to the solicitor, is a prescribed 33-foot cartway that is in the location of the existing roadway. It terminates slightly before you get to this property line, and that's the portion that the township needs to acquire. You know, we've been meeting with the property owners in an attempt to resolve this amicably. That hasn't occurred yet, but there's no reason why the plan doesn't move forward.
So are you proposing, Mr. Lauer, that the developer builds that section of road and then it's barricaded until a final resolution?
Well, in all likelihood, the actual construction of this plan, I would assume, and Mr. Welsh is here, and he's probably in a better position to answer this than me, that will probably not occur until next year. It gives us plenty of time to be able to reach an agreement as to what is occurring in this location. And if worse comes to worse, what you will have in this situation is something that we encourage elsewhere in the township. You will have a developer provide you the potential for an access into an existing plan. And that's really ultimately all that you can require of the developer. Now, Mr. Welsh has agreed to actually covering the cost of the paving of this. What he's not prepared to do, and I can understand why, is to assume the cost of acquiring the right-of-way. So as the plan goes in, it will terminate here. We will come to some kind of conclusion, hopefully amicably, with our neighbors here along the street, and that connection, I think, should be made. If council chooses not to pursue that, at least the future council would have the ability to do so. That, from the standpoint of the fire chief, of the police chief, of the public works director, they all believe this connection is critical.
But the fact of the matter is there is no disposition between the homeowners and the township as to the Manaway connection at this time. And that is one of the stipulations that was passed on from the Planning Commission, that be met prior to vote by the council on this final plan of Juniper Woods.
But I think what Mr. Lauer is saying, we have decided where we want to put the road. That has been determined. What we're trying to deal with now is getting negotiate an agreement that works for all parties involved.
But
We think we'll be able to achieve it.
It's still not resolved at this time, though.
I think what Mr. Lauer is saying is this is similar to other developments when there's, in other cases, open property nearby that might be extended. And his implication is that there would be, the road would be terminated, there'd be a sign that said this might be extended, but that we routinely do ask developers to make those connections prior to a commitment to extend. There's plans now with properties that terminate next to open fields that may or may not ever be developed. That is what I hear you say. Am I correct, Mr. Lauer?
Until we can acquire the remaining right-of-way that we need, this will terminate at this location. I am confident in working with the neighbors that we're going to be able to resolve this one way or another.
All right?
Well, let me back up a little bit. I'm going to go all the way back to August 10th of 2017, the Planning Commission meeting, preliminary plan for Juniper Woods. I know most of you were in attendance. There was one council member that was not in attendance that day. But that was over a 3-hour meeting with residents of Manor Way, Beacon Way, Locust Drive, and Franklin Drive, expressing their concern over any type connection. Every resident that spoke, and there were many, were in unanimous opposition to any connection, citing concerns for children and resident safety, increase in vehicular traffic, speeding, existing narrow roads, increased crime, etc. Juniper Woods' preliminary plan reflected a connection through a township-owned 40-foot right-of-way. The Juniper Woods plan also states all necessary DEP permits needed to make Manaway connection be applied for and obtained by Peters Township. There was no mention of the township acquiring private property. Planning staff recommendations, all necessary DEP permits be obtained. Have all the necessary DEP permits been obtained for that connection? That's part of the requirement of the plan as well.
Well, this approval tonight will be conditioned upon obtaining those permits. That is not uncommon for the township to approve final plans conditioned upon receiving permit from third-party agencies.
We can approve the plans with providing the
Yeah,
conditions.
it can't move ahead without them.
So that would be, okay. October 9, 2017, a council meeting, preliminary plan Juniper Woods. After considerable discussion by residents and council members, the plan was approved by a 4-2 vote. I know the 2 council members who voted against the plan visited Manor Way prior to taking that vote. I would ask, have the other members been to that site and looked at it? Mr. Stiegel, have you been to that site and looked at it? You've never been there?
No, I have.
You have? Okay. Mr. Benequist, have you been there at that site?
Berkowitz.
Berkowitz, I'm sorry. Have you been there?
Happens all the time. No, I have not been.
You have not. Mr. Lewis, have you been?
I have not either, sir.
You have not. Mr. Ball?
Yes, I have.
You have. And Mr. Kozer?
Yes, I have.
You have. So how could you vote on a plan that you've never even seen this area? This has been going on for a year, and several of you have not been there.
The Planning Commission is the ones that they're the point of reference for us. So it's not unusual that we don't visit every single plan that's coming before council.
But there's been a lot of controversy with this connection. Every resident that came up here was against this connection. You're talking about 70 homes in that area.
From a council perspective, we're adamant that where we can, we will have connecting roads. And this one especially, due to its location, is very, we are following suit with what has been recommended by our public safety people. And so that's why it's not unusual for us to have connections.
I'm not questioning the connection. It was talked about before there could be several other connections to this plan rather than Manor Way. There's a right-of-way that goes up to,
It's gone.
there's another resident that offered to sell part of his property to make another connection to this plan. He's in attendance tonight. So there were other options available. And the developer actually even said they really didn't require another connection to this plan. One was sufficient.
But trying to limit these to about 5 minutes.
I understand it. I do have a few more things. A lot of my time was taken up by Paul, if you don't mind if I go on. Thank you. Township officials have stated at several meetings and on several phone conversations there would be no problem getting DEP approval to put Manor Way connection in the existing 40-foot right-of-way. Then why not use the existing 40-foot right-of-way?
Because the township doesn't have property rights to it.
Who does have property rights to it?
Well, according to the solicitor...
It's still there. I see it every day.
According to the solicitor, if I can answer, according to the solicitor, they've reverted back to the prior property owner.
To who? The prior property owner?
Basically, it's an unopened road at this point. And so under Pennsylvania law, statutory directive controls that the abutting landowner would own at least a portion of that.
Was that revised? Was that a revised area?
Revised.
A reserved area? Was that a reserved area?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. The plan and the statute?
In the original plan
It says reserve.
in 1954, it was a reserved area.
Yeah, I don't remember. I don't know if that has any controlling interest on it. It was just unopened.
Actually, the deeds refer to it now road. If you read the deeds, they now refer to it marked as reserved, but now a road. And actually, the property descriptions go to the road.
Do they go to the road or to the center? Because if they go to the road...
I was just looking at the deeds there.
Yeah, no, because if they go to the edge of the road, then the roadbed would still belong to whoever the original developer of the subdivision was. If they go to the center of the road, then they would belong to the owners on each side.
I don't think it says center of the road. I mean, I just looked at it.
Regardless, either way, we don't own it, and we don't have the right to it. So.
Right. I'm trying to find the deeds real quick. That's all. I think it just says road.
Do you have any other?
Yeah, I do, yeah. The cost of making the Manor Way connection in the recorded 40-foot right-of-way is approximately $58,000 less than using the private road and taking residents' property. Why require the developer to spend that additional money? And this information of $58,000 is actually from a study that was done by the developer on putting the road in the existing right-of-way or taking the private road in the person's private property. And he also stated that it probably would be approached $70,000, could have to move water lines and gas lines. So you're requiring a developer to spend an initial $70,000 to take residents' private property and their private road from them. Why is that? What's the logic in that?
Because the township doesn't have a right to place the roadway in the right of way, because that no longer does the township have an ownership interest in it.
And by the way, it doesn't say road, it says street, now a street. And it doesn't say to the center.
Right, it says to the edge of the street.
Yeah, page 71, and I think there's another deed.
Page 75, too, same thing.
Okay?
But putting this connection through and taking the private road in our private property poses a significant safety and liability hazard for the township. The proposal would require an additional 140 feet of guardrail, plus obviously the $54,000 wall. The wall would be approximately 140 foot long with height variations up to 19 foot high. It creates major safety and liability issues for the township. The wall would only be 2 to 3 foot from the road berm. That issue was brought up by the Planning Commission. You're going to have a road, you're going to have a wall 2 to 3 foot away from it. Anybody walking along that road facing the direction of traffic would have nowhere to go. There would be no clearance for pedestrians walking along that road. After dark, the area is going to be pitch black because it's one of the free areas. There's going to be trees and everything right there. It's a major hazard for anybody walking along that road, that wall there. It would increase the potential for vehicular pedestrian accident. Persons or children walking along the road facing that traffic obviously could be hit by a car. Wall height would be up to 19 foot high, with a drop into a rock stream bed with the potential for resident or child accidentally falling over that wall into that stream bed. That wall would not be there if the connection was made in the existing 40-foot right-of-way. It would eliminate all the liability and safety issues with that road if that right-of-way was used. At the one council meeting...
My recollection is that the right-of-way would have required all that, but that the new way, the new proposed, it won't require any of that, because isn't it being shifted?
No, the right-of-way would fill in the stream, and it would be grade across to the other property, almost level grade across.
I mean, I understand your concern, and listen, I was one of the councilmen that voted for doing this, but I mean, I think that we could sit here and talk about it for another 20 minutes. I don't think it's, or an hour. It's not going to change what I perceive to be the outcome of the vote on this final plan.
I understand. I didn't think it would either, but I'd still like to be heard. I have a few more things here, and then you can go ahead and vote if no one else has to
We're trying
talk.
again. It was to be 5 minutes, and I understand.
Well, I'm trying to explain if the road goes through that wall, that liability with that wall, and I want to get on record here that if someone is injured because of that wall, the liability falls on the township, and you had an option of not putting the road there.
Okay.
I also would like to say that we in no way have tried to delay the development of Juniper Woods. The township, with conflicting and changing details, have prolonged the approval process. We met with the developer and were told by the township to work out details of what developer would compensate us for our property. Then we were informed by the township the developer was not required to purchase our property, but the township would offer to purchase our property. The township offered to purchase our property in a letter dated May 17, 2018. Then in a letter dated June 26, 2018, the township informed us that they were just going to take our private road and our property with no compensation.
Well, we can't take a private road. We've got no compensation.
Well, but that's not quite accurate. When we began these discussions, I actually had the thought that, in fact, we had ownership rights to the right-of-way. We made an offer to the property owners, and it was rejected, and we were told at that point in time that each of 3 property owners wanted compensation in excess of what I was authorized to offer. And I was told at that time that was non-negotiable, and that the only thing the township could do at that point is to place the road inside the right-of-way, which caused me to go back to Mr. Smith and ask him to be able to explain to me what our ownership interests were in both the existing right-of-way as well as the cartway that exists there. And it was at that point that Mr. Smith made it clear to me that we did not have an ownership interest in the right-of-way, but we already had ownership of a prescribed right-of-way where that cartway is now located. And that's the change in the approach. That's what's caused that.
Is it 3 property owners or 2 property owners?
If you accept Mr. Smith's opinion, there is only one property owner that we need to acquire.
That's the first lot.
Yes. But if you accept the position of the residents, there are clearly 2, and quite frankly, we could work around the third one and not be involved in that. So.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to clarify that because I know you were saying it's only 2, it's only 2, it's only 2.
Proposal came from the student, not the 3.
And Mr. Smith, just to clarify, your opinion is that this is not a private road, and that because the road had been established, that is why.
Yeah, there's case law from the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, and there's also a Pennsylvania statute to recognize the road where it actually rests versus the road where plan controls. And even if there was never any sort of dedication, the idea that the township's taking care of that portion of Manor Way for in excess of 21 years gets us the ownership of that roadway up to 33 feet from the center. So either way, either by the fact that it was not placed where it was laid out and accepted, typically the cases are people trying to go back to the existing right-of-way, like they're proposing, and the courts have said you can't, because that's unopened. You've got to stay where you actually place the road. So that was quite honestly not the position. The township didn't have any preconceived notions as to what the answer was. The direction for me was, what's your legal opinion? And that's, it was an odd decision because there's some old Supreme Court cases that have looked at this, and it's just the way it is. I mean, the township didn't really pick favorites. They didn't care which way it was. Just that's the way it ended up.
There's some the other way, too. I'm sorry, if you want to make comments, you have to come forward. Thank you.
In the beginning, when we started talking about this, and I did go out and look, based on what we had seen as the initial right-of-way that does go over the creek, whichever you prefer. That was one of my objections, that I didn't believe that made any sense to try to create some sort of access road through there. You're raising a different question that says we already have an access road, and that's
right. In fact, if you look, in my opinion letter, one of the Supreme Court cases said typically these roads are moved from where they're laid out due to ravines and things like that. It's not accident. Somebody, how many years ago, looked at the same issue and said, let's move it over to the right, and that's where it ended up. So we now have rights in that road.
But we're not dealing with that. That's not part
That's
of
not
this
before
plan.
this council
It's part of
tonight.
this plan. We're being asked to approve is the final plan, but the portion that deals with this means just to that property line.
Absolutely. That's not before you tonight, this issue. Now, they're welcome to speak, and you've allowed them to speak, but that's not an issue before council.
Correct.
I think their concern would be that if you leave it there stubbed out. that's-
I appreciate the opportunity to speak, but it wasn't in the minutes tonight that the plan would be voted on without the connection being made.
Yeah.
But if you're saying, the plan's being voted on and right now there's nothing in the plan that's being voted on that the connection will be
I
made.
said that in the opening.
That's a different situation.
Yeah, yeah.
And I know we got way off base here with the legal opinion in that because we...
What's before us tonight is just approval of the plan.
Okay, I just wanted to speak to the council and stress the fact that for the members that have not come out there and looked at that, I wish you would come out and take a look at where that wall would be if that road goes through and the hazard it would pose. If you really get a good look at that, you can see how dangerous that will be.
Okay.
So you're welcome to come out. You're welcome to call me at any time or talk to me. No problem.
Perfect.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other members of the audience would like to talk?
Good evening. I'm John Monroe at 267 Thompsonville Road. My property runs adjacent to the Juniper Woods here. Okay, it's right down. It's a farmland right down here, And my issue is a lot less sensitive than these guys, but there are some rules for buffering between the properties with trees and things of that nature. And I did not see that in the drawing. I did not see any trees being planted for our farm area there. So I just want to make sure that's part of the drawing. I did not see that.
They should be.
They're in here.
I think I saw.
I did not see it in the one I saw. It's
Well, we
It's
have a
there?
landscape plan with all the buffer.
Okay.
Sure.
As long as it's there, it's really important to us. That's all I had. As long as it's there, I'm good to go.
It's a valid concern.
Yeah, it's,
Usually we take that into
we had
consideration.
30 acres of privacy. Now you're not going to have that anymore. So, thank you.
Welcome to Peters Township. Very good. Sure.
I just had two statements to
Say
make.
your name and where you live.
I am Sherry
I
Snyder,
know where you live, and I know your name.
3112 Manor Way, yes, we're the end property. I just want to say we were in attendance at a meeting when our other neighbor, Mr. Pittleberger, stood up and talked about, why they couldn't do the Marble Way extension. And it was brought up at that point, again, that, for 21 years, it really wasn't anybody's land, not the township nor the property owners. And I do remember Mr. Lauer stating that the township's not about taking property, from people. And then we did receive the letter saying that our property does go on that road. We own part of that road. And they say they're going to take the road because it's been maintained for 21 years. Manor Way, I think, is...
But just to correct you, it isn't that the township is taking the road. What the solicitor is saying is the township owns the road now.
Okay.
Up to the point that it terminates. It's that, I will agree with you that the point at the end of your property is a point where hopefully we can come to some mutual understanding about acquiring.
But up until this point, we have thought the road was on our property. We have, it's been part of our property. And when the solicitor said that it's been maintained for 21 years, it would be a great disappointment if Peters Township puts a stamp of approval on, the end of Manor Way. There have been no improvements. It's hardly a road. I really don't think you could call it a road. So those are my statements. Those are our feelings. And we are passionate about, our property and holding on to as much as we can. That's our frontage. So we would hope you would take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Can I have 2 more minutes?
Talk about something.
It doesn't pertain to the road, okay?
All right, come on.
Okay, come on.
Hey, I'm Joe Delisio.
I'm feeling good tonight, so go ahead.
As far as the development, the area being developed was undermined by room and pillar mining, deep mining. I was wondering if the DEP would be monitoring that site, or I was wondering if the developer has any plans of using any explosives in the development of that site at all.
No explosives,
No.
but
None
we
will be
we
used
also
there at
have
all?
geotechnical reports from...
Because I know there's been subsidence issues in the township in the
Right.
past, and
Absolutely.
that is all undermined there. Okay, thank you.
Sure. Is there any other person in the audience who'd like to speak on this issue tonight? All right. Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the final plan for Juniper Woods, subject to the 10 conditions set forth in the Planning Commission memo of July 16, 2018.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
Nay? Okay, that would be 5-2.
Inconsistent.
You're known for that. All right. Next item on the agenda would be payroll and bill.
Mr. Chairman, I have reviewed the payroll and bills. I find them to be in order. I make a motion that we approve the same.
The motion is second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
I was waiting for you. Have a question.
All right. I should have known.
Okay.
Yes, could you tell me why the PCSA fee for Reese Park is $500? It's usually $35.
You asking me?
I don't know the answer to that question, so I'll bet you Mr. Tozer doesn't either. I would have to check.
Yeah, I would just wonder about that.
No, I noticed it too, but,
Oh, yeah.
no, I did. Just like I noticed that once again, we refunded a whole bunch of money for people who didn't attend programs, but
That too.
But you know what, but on that question of refunding money, I actually had a discussion with Michelle Harmel, and I was hoping that they were going to discuss it tonight. It is a very, very small fraction of the total number of registrations. Refunds that we give are less than 4%. A number of those are for programs that aren't offered because there isn't enough enrollment. Very few of them are really people taking advantage of what I think is a very liberal policy. You get to come to a class and say, geez, I like it or I don't like it. People are accustomed to that. Michelle says that she'd be concerned that people might not try things that would otherwise. The number is actually very small. It may seem like it's large.
okay, no, that's fine. You know, I just wanted you to look into it, and I appreciate that.
Mrs. Merrill, anything else?
Nope, that was my question.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. I believe that's 7-0. Next item is correspondence. Anything you want to discuss?
Well, you have a letter in here from Polino Construction about work on East McMurray Road. That contract that was led by PennDOT, that work will be being performed at night. So we'll not have necessarily the complaints during the day about traffic, but we will get complaints about construction noise at night. The other thing that's in...
So, Paul, so they're repaving the entire span from 19 to the county line?
The county line, and they're
including
also...
the portion in front of the golf course.
19, part of 19, right?
What's that?
Wasn't that part of it? Part of 19, wasn't that one lane
No.
going to get done?
It's...
Or was that the gas company?
It's a gas company that's up there.
Well, apparently that went off without a hitch.
Yeah.
So,
I don't think they did it yet.
No problems there.
The other...
But the work will be done from, what, 8 p.m. until
till
7 a.m.
7 a.m.?
a.m.
Get to the area.
right there, right.
The other thing, we have had complaints about noise coming from Federidge Landscaping. We had an officer go up, talk to the people who work there. They swear they don't work at that point in the morning. He did not observe anything on that day. So I don't know what else to tell you about that.
Well, I hope that's the other thing.
Well, I read the report, and it seemed like nobody really started until after that. And it's not like they knew we were coming.
No.
Yeah.
So
Maybe they did.
Maybe they did.
Maybe the noise is coming from it's possible it could be
Someplace
coming
else.
from somewhere else. I mean,
I don't know.
but, all right. Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that. Anything under reports?
I have two questions.
Yep.
Under planning, I wonder, Mr. Zook, there's a company listed, Pittsburgh Builders, LLC. That was new to me. Have we had them building in the township before? It's on the
No, I think
plans.
it's their first, and they're building in, I'm going to say Whispering Pines. It's their first
Is that some conglomeration of other people, or is it somebody brand new?
brand new.
Then the other thing I just wanted to comment, I don't know what you all think, but I like the library reports. I like the way they changed them up. I think it's a very nice way to show the value calculator of when you check out books and check out DVDs and use the facilities, money that you don't spend out of pocket, but you basically get the benefit of. So I wanted to commend the library for changing that up and showing us really the value.
And if you really want to see something that's really good, they actually put out a monthly video report too, and I can provide you the link
I
to
have
that.
watched it on
It's
occasion.
very well
They
done.
also print the value on your
checkout,
statement
yeah.
to show what you personally have done. But it was also interesting to me when you look at the wagon statistics that 37% of the circulation around the county is in Peters.
Yes.
So I thought that was an interesting statistic. So kudos to the library again.
All right. And to, what's that?
Have a comment?
Oh, yeah, sure.
We got a couple complaints from some of our citizens in the Venetian Road area complaining about heavy trucks, oil and gas-related trucks, water trucks, sand trucks on the road. I went down there Sunday, a week ago, just to see what the damage to the road was that was being complained about. And there is some significant damage on Venetia Road. While I was parked there for 5 minutes, 12 heavy trucks, sand trucks, water trucks went past. I don't know whether they're allowed to do that on Sunday or not, but anyhow, there is significant traffic on that road. These seem to be probably the Lutz site, did we decide?
I'm not sure exactly where they're coming
I didn't
from.
see where they were coming from, but I followed a bunch of them back down the other way. They turned onto Thomas Road, then they turned onto Water Dam, then they turned on the
Did you follow them?
That's curious.
Yeah, that's great.
Maybe it's a detour for Linden.
Yeah, there was a detour on Venetia Road.
I was out in that area, I think, also on the weekend. There was an awful lot of traffic coming down,
Yeah.
up and down on Sugar Run Road.
Yeah. Well, my only point is that we've talked about a couple of these drilling sites that are just over the border, and we need to pay some attention to our roads because it's while the drill sites may be on somebody else's township, Thomas Road and Water Dam Road and so forth are into our turf, and I don't know what the loads are on those roads. I don't know what any limits are.
They're state roads, so we really don't have any control over where those
I
loads
understand, but if you look at Venetia Road, there's very, very significant settling on the one side, and on the other, the side of the road has been completely collapsed. So, it's up to the state, I understand.
I thought they had to be bonded or something if they were traveling.
But
They're state
it's a
roads. They don't have to bond
so
for us.
it's not- yeah.
Yeah, and my other item is that did receive a complaint from a resident about people mowing lawns at 6:30 in the morning, and asked Mr. Lauer if there were any ordinances about that.
Well, it was like 95.
They got a minor
degrees down
slide
there.
that on or something.
So that was about the only time they could.
There are not any ordinances about mowing your lawn at 6:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
But,
Wow.
You would think common sense and courtesy somehow would
Yeah.
apply, but I don't.
Sounds like someone's not sleeping well at night.
You can't start construction equipment until 7, but you can mow your lawn.
Yeah, 6:30. All right. Anything else under reports or miscellaneous?
I have one item under miscellaneous. This actually had come up at a prior council meeting. The asphalt prices have increased since we have opened our bid for the paving. We do not specifically know what that impact will be, but Mark is estimating that it could well be around $20,000. It's provided for by the state of Pennsylvania. A large portion of our funding for the project comes through Liquid Fuels money. We are subject to those regulations, so we really don't have any.
I know, we got burned on this before.
Yeah. The other thing is, one of the things that Mark does extremely well is always shops our paving program out to utilities prior to us putting them into the bid package. Despite that, the water companies come back and told us that Franklin Drive will have new water lines installed this year. Thank God they did that before the paper started. So we're going to pull that off the paving program. There was an alternate in the bid for Sienna Trails, I think it was. It comes out in terms of quantities to be very similar. And so since this is a unit price contract, we're going to go ahead and use that money to do the work on that road, and then we'll get back to Franklin next year.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, does anyone have anything else under miscellaneous?
I did want to bring up the idea of possibly looking at contracts for next year. Mr. Bauer, I remember asking you about that, and you said you needed ample time to prepare. We've had some contracts longer than 3 or 4 years, and I wondered what council might think about looking at some of those being bid out because we've had them for such an extended period.
What type of contracts?
Yeah, what are you
I was
talking
going to say, I'm going
The
to ask Mr.
engineering, the transportation, Mr. Smith, some of the ones that have been with us longer than 3 or 4 years.
All right.
And I would ask that if we're going to do that, that council should give me direction on that, and maybe we do that as part of the budgeting process, which will begin in September.
Paul, when I talked to you, I don't know if it was earlier this year or late last year about, we used to bid various insurance packages and things like that.
We're going to do that this year. In fact,
well, if we're going to do that this year, then, we should probably do the engineering stuff and the legal stuff.
Okay.
Do it all at one time.
And that's totally up to council.
I'm not an advocate. Doing them all over again.
Any of them?
Particularly the professional services. I
tend to think that would be a waste of time myself, but if we're going to try to be consistent, we should probably just rebid.
There is no legal requirement to bid those services. It really becomes a question of council's desire and policy. The one with regard to the insurance it's very uncommon that it is bid. We have historically done that, and as a result have been the beneficiary of real savings. I think when you get into professional services, it really does get down to the quality of service that you're receiving and whether or not you're satisfied at the price that you're paying. And so only council can decide whether their solicitor or their engineer is serving the community well.
To that point, Mr. Lauer, one of the concerns I had is that if we wait till the end of the year and we get a contract from someone at the end of the year that has increased prices, we're pretty much in a position where we don't really have alternatives unless we straddle that and extend it. That was my impression. Perhaps the way to do it is to put out a call to the people who we have contracts with now and ask them what they plan to propose for next year, and then we can plan it in the budget, or if it looks like it's going to be an increase or something that would be contrary to what we might like, we could potentially then bid those.
Yeah, and certainly we as part of the budgeting process can request people's rates so that we understand where we are.
I don't think we need to do that for Mr. Smith. His fees have been.
I'm especially worried about him.
His fees have been very reasonable, but to get back to what Mrs. Merrill said, I think that there is a benefit to maybe the engineering fees, because I think she's right. They come in and say, oh, well, we've upped this to $185 an hour, and you're sort of stuck. And, it's not like when we bid it before. We used to get 3 or 4 engineering companies, and even though we usually end up with Gateway, I think the fact that there's competition, might get you a little bit less of an increase or...
What you need to understand, though, with regard to Gateway as a consulting engineer, the fact of the matter is the vast majority of engineering services are actually being done in-house now. Anytime that we have a project of any consequence, like the slip lining project, those are all bid out and it's done on a competitive basis. What Gateway Engineers does and where they get compensated from is the review of developments. And all of those costs are not paid by the township. Those costs are all paid by the developers.
I have developers, call me and complain about, they charged me $30,000. What did I get for that? And I don't know the answer to that. I tell them to call Ed, and I'm sure he doesn't know what the cost of that is.
Actually, there's itemized bills.
I wanted to the penny. No, I'm just saying. But I've had developers complain about that.
And that was what I was going to say.
I don't care if it's not coming out of the coffers of somebody's paying for it, and that's not right if it's inflated.
And I don't disagree. That's where I was going to conclude. But my point is, in part, that we shouldn't think that there's going to be tremendous savings to the township. It is important that developers be treated fairly in terms of those fees. I can tell you this, the one that you have with Gateway Engineers that can't be discounted, long history with the township and a total understanding of what our processes are, and there's value to that.
I'm not saying I'm going to vote for somebody that's necessarily cheaper, but I think that if it might tend to limit the increases from the people we're using now.
All right.
It's like leverage.
Anybody have any issues for next agenda?
I did have one, but I can't remember what it was.
I do. Since we're at the beginning of the middle of the year, I wondered if Mr. Gromick might be able to do that usual attendance, board member participation, and give us kind of a status of where people are. he'll go hand in hand with the board member requirements that we have been talking about.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. That all being said, this meeting is adjourned.